keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all of that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another segment of Ask Junglr. Super excited. This is always my favorite day of the week. I know we got a lot of returning listeners, which honestly, super flattered about. I had a conversation today. They were like, hey, by the way, showing up every single Thursday or watching replays because these are super valuable, which by the way, if you want to catch the replay of any of our past lives, feel free to go. Probably the easiest way to find that is on our YouTube channel. If you go to the YouTube channel and then you look at all of the lives past. So I'm, again, super stoked. So the format of this, by the way, if you are just joining in, is you can type whatever Amazon advertising question you have into the chat. I'll pull it up and I'll make sure that you guys can get answers. If you caught the intro, that's basically the format is throw an Amazon ad question at me and we'll get you answers. Why Amazon advertising? Because that's literally all I do. For the past 8 years, I have been super focused on Amazon advertising, co-founder of an agency where that's what we focus on, is running Amazon ads specifically, and we have seen it all. The other thing that we do is we focus on a lot of larger complex catalogs, say with clothing, sometimes in bedding, baby categories. We also are very aware of the challenges that come with like say seasonal products, especially those that do really well during certain time frames. So for example, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, oh my goodness, you have like about a week and a half to really hit it correctly. If you really want to make those sales, but you have to do it in a way that's not going to completely blow up profits. So that's really what I focus on from an advertising perspective. So again, anyone listening in, if you got an Amazon advertising question, throw it at me. I always come at it from the perspective of, yes, Amazon advertising can be insanely effective when it comes to growing your sales, but it obviously comes at a cost. And with that cost, you also have to be aware of what is that going to do to the bottom line as well. And so in these cases, you really want to be super cognizant of what you're doing and making sure that not only are you growing the brand, but you're not going to just throw a ton of ad spend on it and not see the return. So I already got some questions in here around Father's Day. So I will pull those up and we'll just dive right on into it. But just to make sure everyone can see and hear me, feel free to do a thumbs up, chat. Let me know where you're listening in from, what platform. Would love to hear it. And with that, I'm going to jump into questions. And a lot of times we do like screen shares or I'll share resources. So I definitely recommend if you have any specific questions, let me know because I probably have a resource for it. I also just did a presentation for someone that John Aspinall is going to put on. And it was all around like how to develop creatives for your sponsored brand ads. So if everyone's wondering, again, it spans the gamut. Any questions on Amazon ads, throw them at me and let's go. But the first question we have is how should I act with Father's Day? How should I advertise for the Father's Day gifts? Phrase exact, some tips, please. Fantastic question. I do want to say, so I'm going to answer this question, give you the best tips I possibly have. But what I'm going to tell you is that if you're talking about this Father's Day, we've pretty much missed the boat a little bit. There might be some last minute things you can do, but really the prep for Father's Day starts at least 2 to 3 weeks, ideally 3 weeks before. What we have seen, and let's do a screen share. Let's pull up keyword tool. All right, looks like we're getting waves. Adam's in the chat listening in on LinkedIn. Awesome, cool. Glad to have you. So sorry, I'm pulling up a keyword research tool because I wanted to share something with you. This really what you need to keep in mind when it comes to any sort of holidays that are very specific. So I'm not talking like Prime Day. If anyone wants Prime Day strategy, that's a little bit different. We can totally go over that. But when you're talking like Father's Day, Mother's Day, everyone buys gifts last minute. So what you're going to see, and let me see, Father's Day gift. Let's type this into Helium 10 and we'll go over this. All right, let's get keywords and I'll show you kind of what you're looking at. I wouldn't go after like giftable keywords that you don't already convert on. For Prime Day, for Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, a lot of like gifts for her, gifts for mom, those kind of keywords don't really tend to convert as well. You have a very limited time in which these are going to work and the conversion rates, and everyone else in the space is going to be going after these. Looks like it's taking a minute because what I wanted to show you was the search volume history. All right, looks like a lot of whiskey gifts. Let's see. Gifts for, I'm going to do for the father. Want to find, okay, so Father's Day gifts. If you look at the search volume here, like right now it's pretty high. If we go and we look back at all time, you'll see these very distinct peaks and valleys. And so what we've found is that you really need to like ride this wave of consumer behavior, because what happens is everyone doesn't really start searching. Like, look, everyone starts searching up just the beginning of the month, like, and then all of a sudden it reaches a crescendo, like right before Father's Day, and then just like absolutely drops off of a cliff. So what you'll find is that you want to, one, anticipate that lift. And what you'll do is you'll start pushing bids and budgets as you go into that peak. There is some talk in the space about sort of preemptively, like, oh, if I could rank on these keywords in January, then I would be in a good position, say when Father's Day rolls around. We've seen that that's honestly just a recipe for wasted ad spend. I told you we like to balance sales and profits. And so I'm not a huge fan of like pushing too hard, because what you're going to find is the conversion rates just aren't there. And then the other thing that you want to look at, let's go through some of these keywords, like father, like see how there's this father memory book. Like this is a really good keyword if you have a memory book. So you can see that the search volume is not very high on this, but if you look at it all time, it does start to peak. And so what you'll find is that a lot of times those keywords that are very specific to your product, so you're going to have much better conversion rates here. The problem that you're going to find is, let's just look at, say, like father-son gifts. Like if we popped this open on Amazon, the search page is so varied that you're going to find that it's actually kind of difficult to get good conversion rates on these types of keywords. Let me get rid of some of these things so you guys can see this a little bit better. So what we found is that going after these kind of very broad, generic, giftable keywords aggressively. Now you can try doing like a lower bid broad match or something, or a lower bid phrase match if you want to kind of catch long tail variations or still kind of show up on some giftable spots. But what we found is that I've never seen it work really well to go aggressively after these types of keywords unless you see in your ads data that like, oh my gosh, I have phenomenal conversion rates when I advertise on gifts for dad, it just blows up. If that's the case with your product, then 110% go with it. But what we found is that it's looking at the types of keywords that are related to your products. So let's see if I can find one. I think the best one I'm looking at is like Father's Day memory book, or like any kind of specific dad related keywords that are like specific to your product. That's what I would go after. I wouldn't try the whole like giftable thing unless your product already converts on giftable. And then it's just a matter of maximizing what already works. Because what you'll find is that if you have a product that does apply to a Father's Day gift, oftentimes shoppers already know kind of, they know their significant other in the case of Valentine's Day, or they know their dad and they know their mom very well. And so they say like, oh, I want to search for this specific product because I know it makes a really great gift. And so your very related keywords, you will also see like a lift from advertising on those keywords. So I would go after that. All right. Search terms, there's no search volume in Helium 10, but I got sales. Should I do PPC exact much? It's not showing any search volume. Yes. Always like Helium 10 or any other tools out there that give you like search volume, Data Dive, Jungle Scout, Viral Launch, Junglr. Like there's a ton of really good tools out there. Even like search query performance reports, right? Sometimes search query performance won't show that there's a lot of volume on something. But if your ads are converting and you're seeing that it is working, then like, yes, go with whatever is working in your ads data. I would prioritize that data for sure. Good question on clothing. So for clothing ads, how do you normally organize your campaigns for low ACoS? Do you advertise all products or only best performing ones? Oh, good question. Good question. All right, let's go through it. I have a resource here. That is we call it A to Z launch strategy, but I actually talk a little bit about variations. And it looks like you're also listening in on YouTube, so I will give you that as well. When it comes to campaign setup, how do you handle product variations? So here's what we do. There's two scenarios here. One is where you have zero data to know which variation converts best. And the second one is when you actually have data. So if you have zero data, or obviously if you have one child variation, that's not what we're talking about. If you have multiple variations but zero data, what you're going to do is you're just going to put all of those into an ad group. There are specific reasons why we don't create one campaign for every single variation. I know there's differences of opinions out there for large variation catalogs. In our experience, to control budgets and also to really hone in on what's performing best for that product and ads, we recommend putting all the variations in an ad group. I wouldn't put variations that are part of different parent listings. You want to, if it's only one parent listing, you want to keep it in there. But you can advertise all of the variations. Now, with that, what you wanted to do is, that's saying you have no data. You want to go back and look at the performance. So what's going to happen when you put all the variations? Some are going to perform really well. You're going to have others that don't perform well. And so after you have enough data, maybe a week or so, or even you might get it in a couple of days, you want to go back and look at that ad group. And similar to how you look at, say, search terms that have a bunch of clicks and that are not converting or not performing well, and you add those as negatives, you want to apply the same logic to the variations in that campaign and simply start pausing the ones that don't work. Now, what else you want to make sure that you do is, if you already have some performance data because you've run past ads for it, you want to only put the top performing variations into those campaigns. Now, the top performing variations could be the top 2 to 3. It depends on how quickly or how much issues you have with stock that's running out. But here's the other thing is, for example, let's say you had a blue swaddle blanket or something in this case. You want to make sure for those variation specific keywords. So, if it references a specific color, a specific size, you want to make sure you're only advertising the variations that apply to that search. There's a lot of talk out there. People think like, oh, the Amazon ad algorithm should know which of my variations should show because obviously it's blue. They don't always. And so what we have found is that really, if you want better performance, you want to build out specific campaigns around those like very specific variations. Make sure you do that. Do you believe in the thinking never turn off a campaign instead of just lowering the CPCs? Well, you definitely want to lower the CPCs. If it's not working, you need to adjust bids. It depends. We will pause campaigns if they are not working. And there are some random times where like you'll launch a keyword in an exact match, and then for whatever reason that campaign's not working, you might have to like launch another campaign. So there's always things in flux. What we do is going to be more complicated, more on it than most, but that's because like this is all we do all day, every single day. And so we can just like insane amounts of focus and effort into it. If for whatever reason you're still trying to figure some stuff out, we are a huge fan, and this is very controversial because there's some people who don't believe in it, but I have seen the power of doing this over the years, and so 100% recommend it. If you are trying to test bids still, and especially if you're in a high cost per click category where you need to really increase bids quite high to start serving impressions, do yourself a favor, put a lower budget on that campaign. Highly recommend that, because what that allows you to do is test aggressively with the bids, but not just like spend like crazy when, say, a cost isn't in line with where you want to do it. So what we do is we will set a specific budget. You could still do like $20, $30, $50 sometimes if you want to, have enough budget to test. Oftentimes we'll do 15 to 20, and then we can aggressively test bids, but we know that nothing's going to go crazy because we have the cap budget. Will your budgets run out? Absolutely. But there are certain times where if you push, a lot of people want to like only control through bids. I do not agree with that methodology, because what I have seen is that oftentimes for your top keywords, as soon as you decrease bids to the level that you need to because of ACoS targets, all of a sudden you lose out like all impressions. And so you're left with this catch-22, and like, I need to keep bids high enough to generate impressions, but then I can't push them too low. But then if I don't use budgets as a spend lever, then I'm just going to like, the entire account is going to be thrown off because it was one underperforming campaign. So I would say cap things with budgets, test the bids, And then I would never just like, I would always be a fan of adjusting bids. Now we use something called like a break even bid, or we oftentimes, if you're getting a lot of impressions or a lot of clicks and it's not generating orders, we might set it to like a 15 or 17-cent bid. And in that case, you kind of have paused it because the bids are so low. You're probably not going to get impressions, but it still allows the possibility of doing it. So that's typically our methodology. Hi, sponsor display ads, pays views. Do you target context or marketing? In market interest, do you duplicate different look back periods to start duplicating? Only had first convert suggested landing page. This is a great question. I am a huge fan of testing all of the above. And also when you're testing these different look backs, we like creating separate campaigns just so it can be a little bit easier to identify what's working and what's not working. Now, if you want to test, say, like different look back periods, that might be easier to put in within one campaign. So then you could like go into that campaign and say, okay, this is how 7-day look back, what is it? Now I'm not going to remember. It's like 14, it's 30, 90 day, 180 day, I think, for purchase look back. I don't remember which one has most, if it's purchase look back or views look back, but I would be a huge fan of testing all of the above. In our experience, often the audience targeting in sponsored display ads, that's really been a heavy hit or miss for us. And I think it's more often a miss than not. And so in that cases, we might test it, but oftentimes we don't as much. The audience targeting is way better if you use AMC in your sponsored product campaigns, or obviously DSP has like way better in-market audience kind of targeting, but the look back periods are really helpful. I don't know if that answered your question, Kim. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. In what scenario would you be willing to continue spending on a target even if a cost is over 100%? I would just be adjusting bids. I would adjust bids. The one scenario in which we might be okay with it is if it was a ranking campaign, and if we could identify through tracking the keyword ranking and then taking a look at the total sales volume that the total ACoS was improved because we were running that ranking campaign. That would be the one scenario. And I would want to watch total sales on that product that we're running that on. I would want to watch total ACoS very closely because, again, we got to pay attention to profitability. But there is a very real scenario in which you might have unprofitable advertising. I wouldn't want to run unprofitable advertising on the entire account, right? But maybe some campaigns. But because it gives us greater profits as a whole on the account, that would be the only scenario where I might keep something at 100%, but I would 100% be optimizing the bids, and I would 100% be using my campaign budgets to limit how much spend I have at that 100% ACoS. All right, let's see. Got a lot of these rolling in. Crypto saying, sorry, not just different variations, but also different types, i.e. sports bras, leggings, shorts, etc. Yeah, so I would treat every single parent ASIN as like an individual landing page. So the setups that you have, you want to replicate that for every single one of your listings. The other thing that not a lot of people talk about, so when it comes to sponsored brand ads, oftentimes they're viewed as like a brand awareness. But one of the ginormous benefits of a sponsored brand ad is you can direct to a store page. Store pages allow you to cross-sell and upsell. So an example would be, let's say you have a coordinating set. Like you have sports bras that works with the leggings and shorts, and all of the tones and styles are very cohesive. You would want to run a sponsored brand ad, create a curated subpage within your store, and then allow the shopper to then land there. So they might be interested in purchasing, and you can actually track if you have a higher unit order volume. So if they're purchasing more than one unit, when it's directed to a specific subpage. So that's something that we definitely pay attention to. What is a good conversion rate for sponsor brands video in general? And how do I know if my sponsor brands video is working well? Not from a click-through rate and conversion rate perspective. Great question. Typically speaking, not always, but typically speaking, you should have a higher conversion rate than your sponsored product ads. So conversion rates vary wildly by category. An example would be a 10% conversion rate in supplements. I would consider that very low, but a 4% conversion rate or a 5% conversion rate in clothing, I would consider on the higher end, because conversion rates are very low in the clothing category, actually. 2%, 2.5% conversion rate is not abnormal. And so I would always want to benchmark it against your own account. The other thing you can use is a search query performance report to identify like what is my average conversion rates, or you can use brand metrics inside of the ad console to be like, hey, what's the average conversion rate in my category? And then you want to benchmark yourself against that. Those two data points, wildly useful. And so to know if sponsor brands video is working really well, I would look at, again, conversion rate versus sponsored product ads and just say, is it doing well? Your click-through rate is going to be the thing that tells you if your creative is good. And then where you're directing that traffic, i.e. to a store page, to the landing page. In our experience, a sponsor brands video that's directed to a store page tends to have the highest conversion rates for any sponsor brand ad. Again, you're missing out on any potential cross sells and upsells. So if that's your goal, because you have a really good, large, cohesive catalog, then sponsored brand, you can do a headline video ad directed to a store page. That can be a couple of video with that tends to do very well. But if you're just looking for straight up conversion rates for a specific product, I would say video ad to the product page. And then I would look at your click-through rate to identify how well your creative performs. Hey, this is one ranking. Do you keep fixed bidding strategy for the whole time until you rank top the page? Then what? Yeah, so I would keep a fixed bidding strategy as long as you're not seeing poor conversion rate performance. I would have no problem with keeping a fixed bidding strategy on something indefinitely. Where we would look at potentially changing that is if it's underperforming or we're seeing underperforming conversion rates. Sometimes doing a down only strategy can be helpful there. But as long as your KPIs are in line, meaning you're getting orders, your ACoS is where you want it to be, then I would actually just keep the fixed bidding strategy. What are your thoughts on campaigns with only 5 keywords? I heard that adding any more results in top spending keywords, cannibalizing the budget, not giving enough. You're going to make me go on a rant. I think of no more than 5 keywords per campaign is utter bullshit. I will be very blunt. Now, I do understand how this rule of thumb can be very helpful for people who are just getting into advertising, because it gives you a very defined rule to follow, right? You're like, oh, 5, that's easy. I've been around, like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years. I remember when everyone said no more than 20 keywords in a campaign, and then everybody said no more than 10 keywords in a campaign, and nowadays everybody's saying no more than 5 keywords in a campaign, and then there's some people who go all the way to doing only single keyword campaigns. If you are an advanced advertiser, if you are running your ads on a very advanced level, you know that this rule and is utter, it's bullshit. It's an arbitrary number. Somebody pulled it out of their ass because they looked at an account and went, oh, I see that mostly the top 5 keywords get clicks, so therefore I'm going to arbitrarily roll it. It's stupid, to be honest. Now, if you are following this in your account and you're like, oh, great, Elizabeth just said I'm following something that's stupid and bullshit, like, don't go restructuring, change your ad account. If you are running it more advanced, what you'll do is you'll use your campaigns more as like buckets and segmentation for tests. And then if you have specific keywords within those campaigns that you really want to test, you'll start increasing the bids to see if that does anything. You'll increase the budgets, and then you might split those out into an individual campaign. Now, again, the reason why that can be a little bit more difficult to tackle is it requires understanding nuance. Again, if you're running advertising at the level that we are, we understand the nuance. We can live in the nuance. We know what to do when it's not difficult for us. And we know all of the underlying factors of why something may or may not getting impressions. And so we're willing to work within that. I recognize that saying that there's nuance and it depends can be very difficult and doesn't really give direction to new advertisers. So if you want to follow this rule of thumb, by all means, you're not going to hurt yourself. I just think it creates way more campaigns. Like, what happens when you found a group of 10 keywords and it makes sense to logically group them, but, oh, this rule is going to make me create 2 campaigns instead of 1. I think it's overkill, personally. But if you want to follow it, no harm, no foul. In harvesting product targeting from auto, do you start with ACE and expand and then graduate to individual product targeting if both same campaign? This is a really fantastic question, Kim. So let me define what expanded and what exact match ACE and targeting is, and then I'll tell you what I'll do. So expanded product targeting, not new, relatively new-ish. By the way, it's the default setting when you go to set up ACE and targeting, by the way. And so what happens is Amazon will say, okay, I will target, like, show me on product pages that are this specific product, and then also show me on product pages that are somewhat related or similar to this product. Now, what can happen, very similar to, say, how you think of it as a broad match for ACE and targeting. You can think of it that way. So, in broad match, like, you might show on that specific search that matches the keyword, but you might also show on like a bunch of other things. And you can't say, hey, Amazon, when I increase my bid, I want you to specifically show me only on this search. So if that was the case, then you would use exact match, right? It's very similar. So exact match ACE and targeting says, hey, Amazon, only show me up on this specific product page. So when we're graduating it, we will typically use exact match ACE and targeting because we know that we found these very specific product pages that work really well. So we want to specifically go after those product pages. Now, where expanded ACE and targeting can be really powerful is, let's say that you identified this one specific product page that works really, really well for the product. And then you're like, okay, so I've already put this in a manual exact match product targeting. Okay, great. It's crushing it. Like, the game of Amazon advertising, I'm going to boil it down for you, is going, what is working well? How do I do more of that? And then what's not working well, how do I optimize that, decrease that, right? So in the case, like when that's applied to, say, expanded ACE and targeting, if I'm targeting a very specific product page and I say, wow, this is working really well, how do I do more of this? One way to do that is, again, to use an expanded ACE and targeting to say, hey, okay, not only do I want to show up here, I want to show up on other pages that are very similar to this one. And so that's basically how we would use it. I audited a brand just recently where, because again, it's Amazon's default, they just put it into expanded ACE and targeting. Expanded ACE and targeting did not perform well. The conversion rate just wasn't great because it was pinging a whole bunch of product pages that just didn't work well for the products. So you do have to be aware of that. And if you are doing expanded ACE and targeting, definitely make sure you're keeping up on your negatives. Good question. If we have a single keyword ranking campaign that produces orders at the very first bid we set, do we ever need to increase the bid, or do we only increase the budgets? This is a good question, actually. In our experience, for the most part, we would typically focus on the budgets over the bids, because the bid is going to increase where you are showing up in search, which can be helpful to accelerate, but it's also going to increase how much you're spending on it. And if the performance is great and you can get more by just increasing the budgets, I would focus on that. Now, when you're tapped out, like say you increase the budget's not running out, and you're noticing that running this campaign you're tracking your keyword rankings for this product, and you're saying, oh, it does increase my rankings, but at some point I'm stalled out and I want to see if I can do more. In that case, then you might look at increasing the bids, but we would do budgets over bids first. How should I do if I want to exclude one placement of the three? Unfortunately, you can't. You can't. Placement percentages, until they add negative placement percentages, you really won't be able to control it. And what I have found more often than not is advertisers who focus so much on the things that they cannot control oftentimes end up completely screwing up their ad strategy because they try and do all these gyrations that don't really work with what Amazon allows you to do, and will oftentimes like do things like very significantly limit the impressions, which actually hurts the overall performance. So I would just say focus on what you can control, release the things you can't. Doing negative placements is not something that we can control, unfortunately. Maybe at some point they'll give it to us, but I don't know. How do you manage different placements across your campaigns? Good question. The easiest way to do this is through a bulk file, actually. This is the way that we do it. Now, there's other people in the space who will go through and they'll do a calculation to say, okay, this placement's working better. This is what the bid is, and then apply some sort of logic calculations to that. That is useful, but only if you're doing single keyword campaigns, because there's so many moving parts to things that it only works if you're doing single keyword campaigns, and it's a little bit of overkill. So again, going back to the logic of if it's working, do more of it. If it's not working, don't do it. That's the exact same logic that we apply to placement percentages. And also we're a huge fan of what's like iterative testing. So an example would be, say I'm going into a campaign and I see that, oh, top of search is performing well for that one specific campaign. In that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply an increase on the placement percentage for only that one campaign for that type of search. If you have to be very careful and strategic when you're doing placement percentages. I do know, and I'm in talks with several other advertisers where like they applied bulk logic to the entire ad account, and then they like applied bulk logic to every single one of their campaigns and all of their placements. And it really, really screwed things up and just increased their cost per clicks. So I would do it very incrementally and very intentionally. In our experience, if you're trying to drive more volumes, adjusting the bid will drive way more volume than if you just focus on the placement percentages. If you're out of stock for a product, will the ads keep running? Will your performance reduce if you turn off campaign, turn it back on when you get the product back in stock? So what I would say, when a product goes out of stock, your performance is going to change when the product gets back in stock, no matter what you do. So there's a lot of talk, like it's true. First, second, and third rule on Amazon is don't run out of stock. Obviously, that can't be avoided sometimes. Here we are, right? But I would say that I want to be very clear. There is nothing you can do, no settings you can set, no tweaks or adjustments or hacks to mitigate or get rid of any negative ranking impacts or sales velocity impacts that are going to come when you go out of stock. It is what it is. Now, Amazon advertising is retail aware, which means if you lose the buy box, for whatever reason, your ads will shut off. And then as we know, when we're out of stock, we don't have the buy box, so the ads will shut off. That is not the case for sponsored brand ads, though. If you are running a sponsored brand ad that is directed to a store page, then if you lose the buy box, that ad still runs. It just runs to the store page. And then let's say you have somebody else who has the buy box. If they then click into that listing and purchase, well, then that technically, like, your ads drove that purchase, right? But that is the only exception. Sponsored product ads, sponsored display ads. If you're running a sponsored brands video ad that's directing to the listing, those are going to shut off. The only exception, again, is if you're running to, say, like store pages with sponsored brand ads. So I would want to keep up with that. And then when the product comes back in stock, like, you're going to have to like re-rank the product again and go through that whole playbook. What if we control our bids through AI through a large catalog? I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. I'm going to. Okay, I will say this. If you are using AI as bid optimization and it's working well for you, by all means do it. If I say anything on any of these lives, or if anyone who you respect says something that like, oh, you should never do this, and then you look at your account and you're like, this is getting me fantastic results, ignore me. Go with what the data tells you. And I also have some really great friends who are doing some amazing things with AI, and I really, really respect them. That being said, in my opinion and everything I have tested, I don't know why everyone is so focused on AI for bid optimizations. In my opinion, from what I've seen, from what I've tested, AI sucks when it comes to bid optimizations. I will say that with my whole chest. I will probably ruffle some feathers. The reason why I don't like it is because for some reason, like, there are some amazing bid algorithms out there. We have one. Like, we have our own internal bid optimization software that we have tested and refined over the last 5 years, and it is chef's kiss amazing, getting freaking fantastic results, and it is an algorithm. There is nothing wrong with bid optimization algorithms. Bid algorithms were not failing. There was nothing wrong with them. They were working really well. And the thing with an algorithm is when something doesn't go according to plan. If a bid gets increased, if a bid gets decreased at a rate or through a setting that just doesn't make sense, you can backtrack why that was the way that it was, and you can go in and correct the settings. Again, providing that there are some algorithms out there that suck, to be honest, and then there are some platforms that don't give you the tools to be able to put the inputs into the algorithm that are going to get the good results. My personal opinion, we solve for both of those things, but algorithms are really, really good. Like, really good, especially if you have a human that is controlling, that understands how the algorithm works and knows how to hack it, which we've done with like tons of different tools. It's like, oh, wait, if this looks like this looks like this. Oh, can we do this? And the tool providers are like, oh, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, if you know enough about Amazon advertising, you can get it to do what you want. There is some talk there that like maybe AI would be better on really large catalogs. I don't think so, to be honest. In my experience, algorithms are where it's at. And in my personal opinion, for some reason in the Amazon advertising community, AI is being used to, quote, fix something that was never broken. Meaning it's been used to change like algorithmic ways of doing bids and put it on an AI system that honestly, in my personal opinion, just falls flat. It sucks. Okay. I have some amazing friends who are doing some really cool. I think AI, I'm really, really interested to see how AI is being used in creatives. And there are some new tools out there that are being tested, and some really insanely amazing things that are being used to dissect and surface problems within large accounts. That's where I think AI shines. I have no idea why everybody wants to use it for bid optimizations or budget optimizations, or I don't know. To me, it's like everyone's trying to fix something that was never broken in the first place. I would much rather use AI. And again, we're building some really cool internal tech to help us do things faster and better that were not previously possible. Like when it comes to creatives, like the advancements that are coming out from AI are like optimizing, they're speeding up things that were notoriously very time consuming and difficult. Like, but that was never the case with bid optimization. So anyways, if you can tell, I'm not a huge fan of AI for bid optimization. Sorry to get on my soapbox. I've played around with various settings such as increasing bids and bidding types. Now, even at $4 plus dynamic up and down, I'm still not getting impressions despite keywords being high volume and highly relevant. Yeah, most likely what's happening in this case is that the Amazon ad algorithm does not think that your product is relevant for that. So here's what you can do. One, if those keywords are not in your listing, check and make sure that you're indexed for them. You can also put those keywords in your back end. Sometimes that can be helpful to sort of trigger that association. The other thing that we have done sometimes is if you go and find the top ranked competitors on those search pages you're trying to go after and heavily target them with exact match sponsored product ads so you can show up on their listings and sort of generate clicks and things through that, then sometimes that can work. Can you please elaborate on how much keyword per ad group may be kept? I would say if you're in doubt, just use 5 or 10. That's fine. The way in which we build campaigns is based on logical groupings of keywords that we're trying to test. So think of it as a test grouping more than I'm just going to set up okay, here's an example. Okay, let's say I'm doing keyword research for a product launch, right? Or I'm just doing keyword research in general. And let's say I go into my search term reports and I find 3 keywords that have over 5 orders associated with them that have good ACoS. And I find 20 keywords that only have 1 order associated with them. I'm going to create 2 campaigns. I'm going to create a campaign with just the few keywords that I found that had 5 or more orders, because that's a logical test grouping. And then I'm going to put all 20 of those other keywords into a campaign because they only had 1 order. And I'm going to create a logical test grouping because those segments are different. Or another example, let's say I go and do a bunch of keyword research and I find, okay, let me think. Let's say I have bedding. And let's say that I notice that there's a ton of keywords that have plush in them. And then there's a bunch of keywords that have deep pocket. Those are 2 logical groupings. So I'm going to create a campaign around deep pocket keywords because I want to know if those kind of keywords will convert really well for my product. Or I'm going to create a segmented campaign with all the plush keywords. Now I might have found 4 deep pocket keywords and maybe I found 11 plush keywords, right? Like, irregardless of the number of keywords, those are logical groupings. If I am testing, I went into my search term report and I found 3 product page, or I found 3 ASINs, then I'm absolutely crushing on it. I have over 10 orders, right? I'm going to create a logical test grouping of those 3 product targets. In a campaign, I'm going to do exact match product targeting. And then maybe also I create another logical grouping where I take those 3 products and I do a expanded ASIN targeting. So you can see how, like, that's not a hard and fast rule, which is where the nuance comes in. So when it's an it depends question, it's what is your logical grouping? So you can think of your campaigns as a group, as a specific test that I'm running. That's why I'm not a huge fan of having like 20 different ad groups or something. I want one campaign, I want one ad group, and I want a logical test grouping. Because what happens when I put in all of those, like let's say I had the plush keywords and the deep pocket keywords, and then, oh wait, I found some product targeting, so let's create an ad group for that. And all of a sudden this campaign has like 4 different objectives, right? That's why we have single keyword exact match campaigns, because there's one logical objective. Be super aggressive on this one specific keyword. It is a very tight logical objective. That's why we have maybe a lot more keywords if we're doing like a low bid broad match, because that is a logical grouping and a very specific subsection text. So I don't know if that answered your question. Hopefully that gave you some of my nuance. But again, when in doubt, I mean, just use like, pull a random number out, 5, 10, whatever. Use that in your campaign strategy if you want. I'm just like, again, we're operating at a higher level, so we can have a little bit more nuance in what we do. Oh, thank you for sharing your audit. So awesome. I'm so glad. That was super helpful. Yeah, it is. By the way, if you guys have not seen this, you 100% should. Let me pull this up for you. I was honestly, Kim, I was honestly like, man, I 100% know that everybody's going to steal this, and I can guarantee you, which honestly, if anyone can use it and get a client off of it, more power to you. But this is literally an audit tool. It took me, I mean, like, I've been doing this for a while, so I know what to look for. And it took me like a couple weekends to build, honestly. So it is a spreadsheet-based tool that allows you basically to see every single thing in your audit account, or like in your account, with only one single download. You can just enter in an email address if you're feeling generous and get access to it. But yeah, if you have any questions on that, Kim, I think I have a demo one I can pull up too. How do you approach PPC differently? Is each phase of the product life cycle? What are the phases? That's a good question. So typically it's launch, like you have a launch stage, which is you're going after keyword rankings and you're just trying to get traction on the product. And then you have more of a stable phase. And I would say those two things can kind of bleed into each other. So an example might be like, maybe you have, again, here at the level we do things, we often do them in nuance. And again, we're comfortable living in that nuance because we've been doing it for so many years. It's kind of second nature. Oftentimes people want to break this down into like, all right, you have launch phase, then you have maintenance phase, then you have scale phase, and then like there is a product life cycle, but the product can go through multiple life cycles. And so typically it's, you have your ramp up period, which is your launch phase, but then oftentimes you might find like, okay, so we're in launch phase and we're ranking on these 4 keywords, but then we want to go find like more keywords. So then like these keywords are kind of in quote launch phase or rank phase, but then I also have like these other keywords that are more in stabilization phase. But I would say typically it's rank, which means your total A cost is going to be really high. You don't have any organic sales yet. And then it can kind of shift over when you do have some level of organic sales. So that's kind of like where you're a little bit past the ramp up stage. And then your maintenance stage is probably going to be at the point where you have, I would say, roughly 50 to 60% of your total sales are coming from organic, or like somewhere between 40 and 60% of your total sales are from organic. That's where you're kind of in a more stable, and you can start to like, okay, let's work on these keywords, or let's try and rank these keywords, or let's test a bunch of stuff. But I would say until you get to a good volume of organic sales, that's why it's not really, a lot of people want to make it time frame based. Like actually we onboarded an account where they were doing really, really well. They saw sales increase. Like obviously a cost wasn't where they wanted it to be. And then all of a sudden it was like overnight, like their sales just dropped. And they kept asking their current ad manager, like, what are we doing? Like, shouldn't we be seeing like a greater increase? Like we were on a really good trajectory, and like all of a sudden things just stalled. Like what is going on? And like they couldn't really figure it out. And when we went and looked at and audited the account, it was like, oh, what happened was this brand said, oh, we hit the 2-month mark. 2-month mark is, we're now in maintenance phase. And then they started optimizing for profitability, and like their sales tanked because they didn't have the organic ranking they needed to sustain when they pull back from their ads. And so it was like, oftentimes if you use like a specific time-based like framework to be like, oh, after the first 2 months you should be in maintenance, then you can end up shooting yourself in the foot. It's all how much organic ranking does that product have, and then if we start optimizing the ads to kind of, you know, get a little bit more profitable, do we have the organic ranking that we're going to need to be able to sustain the sales? And if you don't, what happens is when you start to really reduce ads, all of a sudden you like shoot yourself in the foot and sales tank and everything's horrible. If I negate a keyword or ASIN because it's spending with no sales, could I delete the negative later or test again when I feel it's time? Is going to work again. The performance will be back. Yep. You can absolutely do that. It's called archiving. So you can go into your ads account and you can archive a negative keyword. You can also do that through bulk files as well. Yeah, so it don't feel like if you add a negative, you can never, and I have tested it, even though it says archive, you can still re-add it after you've archived it. I don't know why they do archive instead of pause, but yes, you can get rid of a negative and then re-add it if you need to. Is there any stress with frequently returned item bads? Any thoughts and tips? Yeah, so frequently returned can definitely hurt you when it comes to conversion rates. So that's really what we look at. In some products, you will see a significant drop in the conversion rate, which again is going to hurt all performance, sales performance, ad performance, everything. But in some products, we don't notice as much of an impact on the conversion rate. And so everything, even though it sucks to have it, it's kind of just is there. So that's what we look at is cues when we see drops in conversion rates. That's what we look for. Do you end up having a bunch of test campaigns with new keywords? You eventually gradually the performing ones to proven campaigns. Yeah, so we don't move keywords around. I would never move keywords. The reason being is you can never really replicate the exact performance it had in one campaign to another campaign. So I wouldn't treat it as like test campaigns and like proven campaigns. That makes an ad account very easy to like understand. What I would do is maybe use like campaign naming there so you can change the name of the campaign from something. But yes, you will always have some level of testing going on in an account. Not every single thing is going to have, like, if you had an account where there was nothing that was not converting, you're not going hard enough with your ads. Now, obviously, all of your tests, like you need to make sure that you're not doing so much testing that the account goes into negative. But yeah, you always have some level of test, and then I wouldn't like move anything around. I have one account, their sponsored product campaigns are performing really good. But as you know, after some time, that means like 4 to 5 months, the keywords are performing well, stop their performance. Then I stop the campaign and run a new campaign where I target the same keywords. Again, it is performing well. If that is working, I would say keep up with it. Again, I would always want to know why something stopped performing. I would look at it like, was it because the impressions decreased? Was it because conversion rates decreased? If conversion rates decreased, was it because I started showing up in a different placement? It is very possible that you're applying optimizations and end up kind of hurting things. So I always like to dig into like why something happened. But if what you're doing is working, I would say keep up with it. We recently launched a product in the beauty category. We've been running ads for the past 2 months. We tried all ad types so that we're getting impressions, occasional clicks. The CPC is very high. Yeah, CPC is insanely high in beauty. We've only received 3 orders so far. The conversion rate is extremely low. What could be the reason for the poor performance? How can we improve the results? Improve the results by improving conversion rates. It's really all you can do. That's where the performance is low, is because conversion rates are low. And I would also look at your click-through rate. Like, if your click-through rate is low, that means there's something with your main image. It could be the price point. It could be that you don't have a lot of reviews. It sounds to me like it's more of a product market fit issue than it is an advertising issue. How are you doing competitor research? What are you looking for? That's a fantastic question. Let me pull up. I'll show you. This is what we are looking for. So this is from our A to Z launch strategy guide, which, by the way, if you want access to this, if you go to our account or our website, junglr.com, you go to resources and you go to product launch strategy. You can actually download, this is like a 36-page document. It's literally our entire launch strategy, like all of it. You can have access to it. So when we're doing competitor research, we're looking for like products. So our favorite way to do it is what we do is like finding your, what we call like your anchor keyword. So this is your top specific keyword and highly relevant. I go over what is relevancy because oftentimes seeing this visually can be really helpful. But what we want to do is we want to, your top real competitors is when we search the anchor keyword and then see what that search page looks like. So an example would be, in this case, we were searching, what is it? I think it was like muslin swaddle blanket. Let me show you what that looks like here. So here's the search page for muslin swaddle blanket, because we want to find exact products like ours. So like, let's say that this one was our product. This one is personalized, so it's not specific. This one would be a competitor. This one would be a competitor. This is obviously the same product. This is a 2-pack. So you also want to pay attention to the price point. You will want to pay attention to the pack size. So here, this is a ton of different blankets, and it's a much lower price point. So you want to take that into account. We might be, this one is kind of puffy. We might be looking at that one. We might be looking at this one. And so you just want to find like the related products, because that's going to tell you like how well they are doing. Is going to reflect more on how you can be doing. And a classic example here is oftentimes when looking at a marketplace, a brand will say, oh, look at this specific product, like, and compare themselves to somebody. But oftentimes what you'll find is that the top, not always, but oftentimes say like the top person in the space may have a very well recognized brand. Like an example here, a classic example here would be, let's look up pimple patches, because I know that this is one that has a lot of like really heavy hitters and strong brands. So a lot of times, like someone who might be getting into this might be like, oh my gosh, look at Mighty Patch. They are the best seller. Mighty Patch has so much brand recognition that if you are coming into this space, you're never going to keep up. So I wouldn't start comparing now you can look at them for like their images. What are they doing? They're obviously doing a lot of things really, really well. So it's not like you can't learn from them. It's just when you're looking at competitor research, that's not going to be your competitor because they have all of the brand recognition. So you might want to look at other ones. And honestly, thankfully, I don't have many breakouts, so I don't really look at pimple patches that often. This one's a recognized brand. I'm not sure if Clear Patch, this one's a more recognized, maybe this brand or this one. So you also want to look at a great way to know if somebody has brand recognition is to reverse search their ASIN and see if they have a lot of brand searches that they're getting. If there's a lot of brand searches and you don't have a lot of brand searches, then there's going to be a disparity between, kind of what you can achieve and what that brand has achieved. So that would be my biggest example when doing like competitor research, is like, don't kid yourself that like, oh, they're doing $1 million a month, I can do $1 million a month. It's like, well, they're also sold and, everyone sees them in CVS, Walgreens, like they're everywhere. And so when it's very common, if somebody's going to search pimple patches, they'll probably be searching for that one, or they'll have much more recognition. So their ceiling on what they can do in sales is going to be much greater than yours. So I would look at like products, and then again, you can learn from them, but don't think you can do exactly what they're doing in terms of sales, because you don't have the brand recognition to be able to do that. Awesome. And with that, we are an hour in. So this has been really awesome. I really appreciate everyone joining in. Again, if you want access to A to Z launch strategy, definitely recommend going to Junglr.com, searching in resources, or if there's another resource that I've talked about today and you want access to that, let me know. I'm more than happy to share it. With that, I will see you guys all same time, same place next Thursday. So come with your Amazon advertising questions, and I will give you answers to help you grow your brand without having to destroy your profits in the meantime. Thank you. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.